Hello, I'm Bryan Hutcheson, Sheriff of Rockingham County in the city of Harrisonburg, and thank you for joining me for this week's segment of the Rocktown Crime Report on rocktownnow.com. Today's Friday, September the 26th. What we're going to do for today's segment is do a few questions. We've had several good ones come in, hadn't gotten to them in a while, so today we're just going to we picked three of the questions that had come in, and we're going to get to those today, kind of get caught up on some questions. Maybe next time we'll get back to some crime numbers, arrest numbers, or whatever. But I wanted to touch on a couple of the good questions that we had to come in. So first off, the first one, how many animals are there usually available for adoption at the SPCA? And that's a good question, maybe a follow-up to our last segment where we kind of went out to the SPCA. If you didn't see that one, check that out. We talked about it in depth, but maybe a follow-up question to that. So we checked with them, and what they have, the current number is, as of today, they have 34 dogs at the shelter. They have 13 that are in foster homes right now. And as far as domestic cats, they have 30 that are at the shelter available for adoption. They have 3 that are available for adoption at PetSmart. So we have, they usually have a pretty good, I guess inventory. If you're looking for a pet, they have some great ones there that you can adopt. And I believe September is still the Name Your Price adoption special that they have going out there. So check out our friends Huck and the gang out there at SPCA if you have any interest, or if you know somebody who might for any of the great animals that they have out there. So thank you for that question. Next question, how does the court process work if the same person is facing charges at the same time in different places? And this is also something that we've had here locally, and we do get on a fairly regular basis. And usually the way that works is the first place that individual will face the charges is where they were arrested. So wherever they get arrested, whatever those charges are, say if they had outstanding charges in another locality, they would face the charges where they were arrested, and then they would go to the other place if there's 2 different places. So usually it's wherever they're arrested. The exception to that would be in the case of if it's a dramatic difference in the severity of the charges. So if it's a very minor charge where they're arrested for, say, in Shenandoah County, and then they had outstanding charges down here in, say, Harrisonburg on some serious charges, well then more than likely that would reverse, and they would face the most serious charges first, and then go face the lesser charges in the other locality, if that makes sense. So generally it's where you were arrested, the other charges come after that. Again, if it's a big difference in severity, then the more severe charges come up first. Again, we do get that. We have had that recently, and usually it's real easy to work that out with the localities and get those trial or those hearings in the order really that works out best for the system all in all. So good question there. And then another question, third question, what are the requirements to be able to officially report someone as a missing person? And that's a good question. That's something that, again, we also get, a little bit maybe more often than what we want to. And there's some complexities that go in there with that. It's not a cut and dry thing. And there's a system and there's a reason for it. So first off, and you're not going to be able to see this form, but it's a lot of small print on this form, but I'll kind of touch on the Virginia Missing Person Information Clearinghouse Report, which is how you enter somebody as a missing person. And they have to meet some criteria. I'll kind of briefly touch on them. Again, it's a little bit complex. You can't just do it arbitrarily as you can imagine. It has to be quantifiable to why they're missing, and not just say maybe, doing something recreational or a runaway or whatever like that. It's kind of a distinction there. And so the conditions generally are there's a disability, the person is under a physical or mental disability, and they are therefore endangered because of that. They're endangered because the circumstances of which they went missing indicate that there's a threat to the safety of that individual. Involuntary, there are facts to indicate that individual was disappeared or is missing and not under their own will. Like it can be shown in some way. It's not a runaway. It's something that made this person go missing versus their own free will. A victim of a catastrophe is one, and then they have kind of the catch-all. Any person, an adult, 21 or older, that doesn't fit the criteria in any other category, and they're missing, and there's a reasonable, articulable concern for their safety and well-being. So once if you kind of meet those conditions, the form gets put together, and that person is therefore entered in the state, really the national NCIC VSIN database. State Police kind of coordinates the program, but they get entered to where they can be looked for. If they are encountered at all, it would be what's called a hit on a missing person. So that's the form. If it's an adult, same, very similar form and similar circumstances for juveniles. It's just the Virginia Missing Children Information Clearinghouse Report. The same type of thing. You enter the similar circumstances, and that individual, if they meet those categories, can get entered into the database as a missing child. And so then the next level to that, and you've probably heard of this, is the Amber Alert. You hear sometimes, fortunately it's not that often, but you'll hear about, well, Amber Alert. Well, what's an Amber Alert? And we'll put a definition here on the screen for you from the Code of Virginia. And it really, what you're talking about is an abducted child, and just kind of briefly touching on some of that from the code. Believed to have been abducted, 17 or younger, so they're a juvenile. Disappearance poses a credible threat as determined by law enforcement to the safety, health of the child, or any other circumstances as deemed appropriate by Virginia State Police. And so the Amber Alert itself is that notice of the child abduction provided to the public. It goes out to the media. It goes out really nationwide. It goes out through a lot of different formats to try to be spread out as quickly as possible and widely, a wide net to let everybody know this child's in danger. And so that Amber Alert is a great program. When it's appropriate, you can get the key information out very, very quickly. And then similarly, on the lower part of that, you see where the missing senior adult, senior alert that is there, and similar type of things. If their whereabouts aren't known, and for the older, that senior thing, it's more of a, if they think maybe it's a cognitive impairment, they require assistance from a caregiver, there's threat to their safety, and then they can get entered as a senior alert, again, in a similar way to what that Amber Alert is letting casting a widespread, major kind of push out to the media and all other outlets to let as many people possibly know as quickly as possible of that, again, senior alert, Amber Alert for juveniles, that it's not just missing, it's really that next level where there's an imminent or really, really seriously credible threat of safety for that individual. So really some of the criteria for the plan, and you think, it has to be kind of restrictive by nature, because if it's you don't want to be doing that for a runaway or just for someone who didn't come back when they were supposed to because they were out with friends or having other commitments that they were doing. But the key thing is a law enforcement agency kind of has to establish and kind of do an investigation of sorts to at least get rid of other alternatives as much as possible to really differentiate between missing and then those Amber or senior alert levels. So good question, kind of a little of a complex answer. It is cloudy. It's a lot of different kind of variables that come into play. But what we would say is don't ever hesitate to call law enforcement if you have someone whose whereabouts are not what they should be, it's unknown, or there's of a concern to you. Well, then call law enforcement, and whatever the appropriate measure, either whether it's entering them as missing or maybe one of those alerts apply, that's fine. Or maybe it's just a BOL. We put out a BOL, be on the lookout for that individual, kind of have the local units, local law enforcement patrol some known areas and try to find them that way, whichever's appropriate. A lot of different options there to qualify as a missing person. So hopefully that kind of answered, gave some information about a little bit of a complicated subject, but hopefully it was insightful in doing that. The other thing I'll say is to just remember, we love those questions. We always love to get the questions in, send them into the news at rocktownnow.com, and want to talk about things or touch on things that are of interest to you. So definitely appreciate those. Again, next time we'll get maybe back into some crime numbers, get caught up on some of that. But we definitely thank you for tuning into this segment, and we'll see you next time.